some and introduce to others, Mrs. Rhoda Connett. How you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Now, could you please explain to us exactly what your job entails, as far as what you do for the town of Hall?
Okay, I'm in charge of the beach management committee, and the committee is responsible for managing things on the beach to try to protect the beach as well as provide access to the citizens of the community. We write a beach management plan, which becomes a legal document in terms of how to manage the things on the beach in terms of of sand and in terms of any equipment on the beach and in terms of the dunes, and we have and I'm also responsible for providing beach grass planting to renourish the dunes every year.
Okay, that is great. So I've taken the opportunity to be able to film a massive, great section of Hall. Um, and I really want to capture this portion of these dooms that you were talking about. Now, what is the purpose of the dooms, and what do the dooms do to protect the town?
Well, when the dunes are planted, they trap sand and they hopefully protect, stop the water from coming over onto the homes behind them.
Hmm.
But one of the things we had to do is we had to make sure that we had our beach path, our access paths for people going in the right direction with sand fencing that would also help to protect from northeast storms. Our biggest concern are northeasters. We don't have any problems with hurricanes. We have problems with the northeasters because
Okay.
and they're the ones that basically come over the come if if they're going to be a problem, they're the ones that are going to come over the dunes and up the paths and over the seawalls.
Okay. Now, due to climate control,
Yeah.
have you noticed that uh, getting the sand dunes to maintain their protection through the town, has there been a difference over the years?
We have more and more moderate coastal storms, and the moderate coastal storms that used to be did not provide much damage. Now they're providing a lot more damage because of the moderate coastal storms are lasting longer, and so it allows for the ocean to build up higher waves and a bigger storm surge. And the longer the storm lasts and the higher the winds, the bigger the storm surge that in fact can overtop the dunes and come up the access paths. The biggest problem is actually at the north end of town, at the south end of town, which is owned
Hmm.
by the state, the Division of Conservation and Recreation. And if you look there at the seawall there, the water, every time we have a moderate coastal storm, the water comes over the seawall there and floods Nantasket Avenue, and you have a river coming down the main road in Hull. And the problem is the state, when they created the seawall, in order to create a parking lot, they put it in the wrong place. And because
Hmm.
it's in the wrong place, then we have increased erosion in that area, and the water continues to come over that seawall and will continue. And so that's our biggest problem right now is that they put the seawall far too far seaward, and so as a result, it doesn't work, and it contributes to erosion. And so um, when I first moved to Hull, you could sit on that seawall and touch the sand.
Really?
Now the sand is about 10 feet below the seawall, and
So
that's
I'm just going to show.
yeah.
I'm going to bring up a small clip of the seawall. So this right here is the seawall that you're referring to right now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So now, explain to me more. You said that this seawall right here is not optimizing its protections, in your
Absolutely not.
opinion.
Absolutely not. Um, in fact, the seawall has been ready to collapse, and so the DCR, which is a state-run
Hmm.
commission, um, created a citizens group about 7 or 8 years ago to try to determine what to do with the failing seawall. And so they came up with seven possible solutions, and the commission chose the first two, and they decided to go with the last one, our least favorite, which is putting boulders up against the seawall only to keep it from falling down. It doesn't do anything in terms of protecting the beach. It just protects the seawall from falling down. But the problem with the boulders is we already have very little beach at high tide. like for an hour and a half each day, there was no beach. And
Yes.
when they put the boulders there, it gave us even less of a beach. So if
Okay.
yeah.
Go. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so they did not listen to their own citizens advisory committee. They chose the worst option that we selected, number 7.
Do you believe that that was more cost effective for them to do? Because look, gauging from the building to the sea is less than 50 feet. Okay, it is. I mean, in my opinion, it's less than 100 feet away from this
Yeah.
particular wall right here, and we can see the water already rising up to the second step as we're filming right now.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that the boulders that were put in place, which is what we're looking at coming up right now,
Yes.
I'm going to bring it up a little bit further so that they can actually see these boulders that we're referring to. Now, these are the boulders
Yes.
that are lining the seawall right now. They
That's
look
correct.
fresh. All right, now, from my impression, I thought that these boulders would be able to break the wave down so that it will not affect the actual community itself. But as you're
No,
saying, these boulders are just there to stop the wall itself from falling.
that's right. That's correct.
That is interesting. Now, the further we go along, we start seeing that the boulders are now becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, this area right here is a bigger portion of the beach, and we're moving into basically the largest piece of the beach that's remaining.
Yes.
Even though the beginning of the beach could be bigger, if what would have to happen to get the beginning of the beach to be um, bigger on the beginning of in the beginning
Okay.
of town.
One of two things: either beach renourishment, which the state of Massachusetts does not allow, or moving the seawall back approximately 30 feet, which is what our recommendation was.
If you move the seawall back 30 feet, how much? Okay, so you would be gaining more beach ground,
Right.
but wouldn't the water come in because of the high tide and the rising of the oceans?
Well, yes, but when you have more sand, then the water won't come up as far. And also, if you plant dunes there, then that will also protect the beach from further erosion. So that that was stuff that we analyzed when we made that recommendation. But the state decided not to do it because it was the boulders were a lot cheaper, and they didn't have to do much work. All they had to do was bring in the boulders, put them down against the seawall, and then they could just leave and forget about it, rather than try to solve the problem.
And the state is the one that elected to do this.
That's right.
Okay, so these right here are the beginnings of the sand dunes that
Yeah.
you're talking about right now.
Yes.
All right. Now, as you can see, these sand dunes right here, could you explain just a little bit about these sand dunes? And I mean, me not being a person that's lived near a beach for very long, I'm so sorry about that. Can you explain to us, the viewers? Let's stop right here. Now, these sand dunes, they have some type of look like grass that's growing
Yes.
out. What is the purpose of that grass right there?
Okay. The grass, which develops very deep roots and grows very well in the sand, it helps to trap the sand, to build up the dune so it's larger. And the larger the dune, then the more protection it is against the water coming up.
Oh, okay, okay. So, as you can see, this dune right here clearly has been here for a little while. I see the grass that's there has been growing for quite some. It looks like it's been growing for quite some time now. Once the wave comes in, if there is a storm, you say that sand dune, it doesn't stop the wave. What it does is it breaks the wave
That's
up.
right.
Okay, so now
And so,
because
these dunes often get excoriated by the water, but that's okay because it means they're not hitting the houses. I mean, we
yes.
want the dune is supposed to be sacrificial. So it's supposed to stop the waves, and it's supposed to stop the water. And so if the dune does get excoriated by the waves, that's what it's designed to do. And so again, it's supposed to be a sacrificial dune, and then we replant every year, and so the new grass will help to trap the sand again and rebuild up the dune.
Okay, and as you can see, the distances between the houses and these sand dunes is clearly no more than 50 to 60 feet. So those sand dunes are quite important and have been proven to be resilient. They're sacrificial, so that they can come right back the next soon as the
Yes,
storm is over with.
yes.
And how much? What is the cost for maintaining the sand dunes itself in comparison to building a seawall?
Well, the seawalls have been proven not to be effective because what happens
Okay,
is the wave hits it and it goes down and takes out the sand at the base of the seawall. And so what happens is that we lose more and more sand if there's a seawall there. And so the seawalls have proven to be totally ineffective. And so the dune is much better because number one, it's a soft barrier, and so the waves are able to with it to break the the force of the waves because it's a soft barrier where the seawalls are hard barriers and they just cause more erosion. So um, anyway, there's only actually about 18 feet between the house and the houses and the seawall. It's not very much at all. I
no.
mean, and the dunes, but we replant every year, and in that year we replant in the spring, and by the fall the grasses have grown and flourished and are doing their job in terms of trapping the sand and building up the dune. So we do that every year, and the cost is basically the cost of the grass, so we're not
Oh,
talking about a lot of money. But the thing that does cost more money is that the openings that allow access to the beach have to be done in the right direction and in the right way. And unfortunately, when they were first done, they were not done in the right way. And so we have to go through, and we're starting this year to redo all the access paths to make them face in the southeast direction and have the snow fencing, which also helps to trap the sand.
okay, I'm trying to capture that right there. Is what you're talking about? Is that a glimpse of the snow fencing,
Yes.
as well as what seems to be a new
Ah,
patch of grass being grown right next to it, which is the start of another a doom. Am I correct?
yes.
Okay, so now the snow fencing, you saying that you have changed it from its original direction, which was facing which way?
Was facing straight on into the ocean. And whenever we have any storm, the water can come right up through that snow path, through the access point if it's facing straight on.
Hmm.
They need to be facing to the southeast because we get northeast storms. And so if they're facing in the right direction, the
It
water
won't
won't
flow
go as
up.
much.
Okay, all right. So the cost of maintaining. So if like last year, there
Yes.
wasn't any major storms last
Right.
year.
Right.
So uh,
But we still plant.
but you
We
still plant every
Yeah.
year. You still plant every year,
Yeah.
and what that does is it grabs hold of the sand
Right.
for to a certain extent, and once when the water does hit it, it takes a lot longer to break the sand down as opposed to building a sand dune without any grass growing in it. Am I
That's right.
correct?
That's right. Because
Oh,
the water could just wash the sand away. This way, with the grass, it stabilizes the dune, so that the dune stays in place because of the roots of the beach grass.
okay. And this right here is the beach grass. This is amazing. Okay. Now, in addition to the beach grass and the dunes, that we already know that the expense on this is just a little bit at right at 4,000. And as you can see different variations from the new plants to from the new planted area to the area that it seems to be like it was planted probably last year sometime. And you can see that it is actually growing well. Um, it is absolutely growing well, and basically those sand dunes, they're protecting that 18 feet that a lot of these residents have
Right.
before the water comes into their houses. Now,
Right.
in the video not shown, I will be showing this also. It also has a certain parts of it, whereas in some of the homes in their front yards, they have a dome-like structure in their front yard, Now that right there is going to be adding just a little bit more protection for them,
That's
just
right.
in case a little bit makes it across. It almost acts like a moat to stop the water from actually entering too far into the house. Am I correct?
Actually, it not only protects those houses, but the houses behind them, because the land goes down, it slopes down behind the houses on Beach Avenue. And so the houses behind them are more at risk of flooding than they are, because when we have any flooding events, the water tends to go right past their houses and down to the houses behind them.
Okay,
We have like hundreds of houses behind them that need the protection even more than the houses on Beach Avenue need.
okay. Because their houses, the water will flow right through them, through the crevices of the houses, and then will start hitting the houses that's directly behind them,
Right.
not giving them the protection that they absolutely do need
That's right.
to actually be able to be protected as well. And I understand that. So now, what do you suggest moving forward? Now, not only are you battling with the state, but you're also battling with a 50-year organization who's been trying to bring awareness to climate change and how it is affecting not only the town of Hall, but many beach areas and the globe as a total. How has this been received by the state, in your opinion, especially with all the facts that have been brought up and the reasons why this is more efficient?
Well, the state has not approved of beach nourishment, which would also help, which they do up and down the coast, but not in Massachusetts, because the state will not allow it, because the Division of Marine Fisheries is afraid that in harvesting any of the sand from the ocean, that it might impact on the fisheries. So that's been a problem. We've had to sort of try to battle them and try to find places that we could harvest sand that would not affect the fishing, because Massachusetts is a very big fishing
Yes.
industry, and so that's a big problem. The other thing is that a dune, as it develops, it tries to move farther landward. So the dune that is currently there keeps trying to move farther landward. So eventually, that dune will probably go over the street and provide, like there'll be very little street left in front of those houses. And so that presents a big challenge, because what happens to those houses in terms of access of emergency vehicles and also parking for those houses that may in fact end up with a dune in the front yards.
So now the maintenance of that will be, would you just be pushing the doom back closer to the ocean, back
We
to where
move
it was originally at, and then allow it to gradually move back in a natural stance? Uh,
No, we don't move the dune back, because if you move it at all, then you're interrupting the root systems of the grass there that are protecting all of the homes in the town. And so you really can't move the dune back, because you're just going into the root system, which we don't want to do. So
okay.
unfortunately, we're just going to eventually just have to let it go and see what happens. I mean, the street is already a one-way street, and so there's not you can't do much about changing it to a one-way, which might have helped. But it's already one way, and there's not much room for vehicles, for emergency vehicles to get by, or for people to access their own homes. And so that's going to be a challenge for the town in terms of how it's going to respond to the dune as it moves farther landward.
So so the doom is the doom being pushed by the water, which is causing it to move, or is it naturally because it's there? Not saying that it's a living organism, but because of all the plant life that's there, the roots are growing.
Yes,
It's naturally
it's
being
natural.
moved around because of the root. The roots are now holding on to it, and that's naturally pushing it back.
Right.
And
That's
it's and then sometimes a storm surge could possibly come in and reach the sand dune wall, but not enough to overtake it.
right.
Water typically goes through sand a lot faster, so by entering into the sand dune and then draining back out, that's process right there is what's helping it to be pushed to the across the street.
Right.
Okay, all right. And the simple maintenance to it, would be to allow it to do its job and to move, because you don't want to destroy the actual
Right.
root system of it, because there is no real piece of equipment that will be able to push it perfectly back.
That's correct.
And the sand and a sand wall will be not only detrimental to the town, because it's not going to do what it's supposed to do, because it's going to be moving sand. So my next question to you is has what will be the cost of actually producing your own sand, and has that been something that has been talked about, and what is the cost effectiveness of that right there in and of itself?
Well, you can get sand from land sources, but they're not. It's not the same as our sand here. And so we've tried a few times to bring in other sand. And sometimes if there's a break in the dune, we'll fill it with land-based sand from a landfill, or from a quarry actually. But people complain because it's not our sand, and it's not that you don't it has the same look, it does not have the same feel. And so it's more like a kitty litter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really not very good. We've tried that a few times, and people have complained bitterly because one of the things about our town here is that it's a summer resort, and people like want to go to the beach, and you don't want to sit on get a kitty litter. You want to sit on our nice fine grained
Sandy
sand.
Beach.
Yeah,
Wow. So we really do have our hands tied here with not only trying to address climate change, but at the same time trying to address a state which is going to not necessarily do the cheapest method, but they're going to do the easiest method, which can last the longest. And I guess that's what the state is looking at.
right.
Now, there are many different programs that will be able to solve this. It's going to require money. Um, Getting the sand quality to a standard that you will have no issues out of. That's going to be a challenge right there.
Yeah, that's why we
And,
wanted to do the beach nourishment and harvest the sand from the ocean floor. So it'd be similar sand because our sand has like a literal effect where the sand go during the winter, it goes around in one direction and goes offshore a lot. So we have a lot less beach in the winter. And the summer the sand comes back, and so we have a lot bigger beach. But if we were able to harvest the sand from, the ocean floor, that would be, the right kind of sand for us. But the state doesn't allow it.
and because they're trying to protect the coastal shores, who are the fishermen who are
Right,
out there, and it's
right,
going to affect them.
right.
Okay, that does sound quite interesting. Uh, but I have seen this done in many other areas, whereas and they have these massive machines that sit
Yes,
out in the ocean, and what they do is they suck on the ocean floor
right,
and push the sand right
right.
out onto the beach.
Yeah. They do
Um,
it everywhere except Massachusetts.
yes, but those areas, I can't say if they have a big fishing industry or if they don't have a big fishing industry, but I do think with a little bit of research, we can determine how far out from the shore we should be, as it pertains to moving the sand back onto the beach areas.
Yes,
Now,
we were.
go ahead.
I was going to say we were looking at like 7 to 10 miles offshore. We were not looking at any near shore because near shore would be really devastating. So we were looking for sand sources like 7 to 10 miles out.
Mm. Where coral reef is at and where the actual marina life will be at. So that, and the expense to actually research a good quality area, whereas and it's not going to have a devastating impact
Yeah,
on the oceanic community.
yeah,
They're looking at the cost of that as well. What now? As you said earlier, you said it would be devastating. Why would it be devastating if you like if I was to walk to the beach right now? You have the actual beach,
yeah,
and then you have probably about maybe I'd say maybe 50 feet before you have a maybe about 50 to 100 feet before you have a massive drop off. And why would it not be feasible to go out maybe I'd say a mile maybe not even like maybe like a mile or half a mile out, so that at least the beach goers could have. Because if you come in too close, this is just if you come in too close, now you're digging a hole right where the beach meets the beach sand meets the ocean. So we don't want that. So what we want to have is like maybe like a mile out, a mile and a half out.
It would have to be more than that.
Okay, now explain why would it have to be more than that?
Well, because again, the way the sand goes over the course of the year, you would be taking sand from the area that would come back onto the beach if you only went like a mile offshore. And
Oh,
yeah, and the other thing is that what happened before the storm of '78 is there was a massive sandbar about a mile or so offshore that protected the town from massive from wave action. But during the storm of '78, that sandbar was destroyed. And so it's beginning to come back again. So you don't want to do anything to destroy that sandbar, which is protecting the town from more major destruction. So it does that naturally. The beach, the beach tries to heal itself, and
so that would be a great question that I would like to ask. Could we use the town unapproved sand initiative to help build that sandbar back up? I mean, it wouldn't be sand that we would use on our beaches. That would be a great, I guess, alternative to this situation that we're
well,
having right here.
except that sand does come back onto our beach in the summer.
Oh, so even if you do put it
Yeah.
out there in a certain time, it will make its way back
Yes.
on
Yeah.
our beaches.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We'd have to go much further. We'd have to go further out to harvest any sand. That would not create a problem. But again, the state doesn't allow it, so we're hoping that at some point that they will allow it because every other state allows it.
Exactly.
Um,
And the areas is that area of the beach a heavily fished area?
yes.
Oh, it is. Okay. All right. Now, so it does. So they're looking at the income revenue of the local town fishermen and how if we remove or we start altering the natural flow of the sand that's out there, it could affect the aquatic life very fast.
Right. It's
Is
not
there
only the fish, it's clams and lobsters, a big lobster area, and and there are clams that are harvested out there as well. So
So there really is they really do leave your hands tied when
yes,
it comes down to protecting the beach.
right.
And even if you go 12 miles, have you considered and I think I heard you say this earlier, I just want to make sure I got it right. Have you considered importing sand from other areas?
Well, the problem with importing sand is, first of all, there are very few places where you can import sand from, except for quarries, inland quarries, and that's where the sand is not terrific. But the other thing is, if we were to import sand from the quarries, we're talking about hundreds of trucks coming through town to bring in that sand and ruining the roads and everything else. So I mean,
Hmm.
there are a lot of implications of, and nobody wants 100 trucks a day to come into the beach. So
Yeah, I can absolutely agree to that. That right there would be a very hard, a
yeah.
very hard decision to make.
We try to find out, like there are some places that do dredging in some of the rivers in Massachusetts, and if that
Mhm.
sand became available, then sand would be acceptable.
Okay, so there are certain areas.
But there's very little of that happening.
And I think now what exactly is dredging?
Well, they would make the pathway of the river or the bay um, um, deeper so that larger vessels could come and go,
Yeah,
because right now
exactly.
it's it's hard for any vessels that have a larger hull or anything or keel to be able to come into some of those areas, and so they dredge them to make it deeper so that those boats
Those
can come in. Yeah.
those areas can have the actual traffic coming through right
Right.
now because it's only
Right.
great to have a certain size vessel coming to the bay
Right.
to the bay area or to the
Right.
front area. Okay, so it would seem to me like this right here is going to be, there is no real fine solution because each side, it really does have, they really do have their own interpretation on how they are not only protecting the beach but also the ocean. And but I don't hear anybody talking about how climate change is going to is playing an amazing role on this as well, because the beaches wouldn't be rising as fast as they are rising or affecting as much as they are affecting if the polar capsules were not melting in the rate that they are melting, which is causing the totality of the ocean to rise about 2 to 3 inches every so often. Now, how could we narrate this so that I guess not only the state but the world will understand that the only other solution would be to now focus on our carbon emissions and our carbon footprints
Yes,
to try to reduce.
and absolutely to use more wind power, more solar, which are renewable energy that does not affect our carbon footprint, and
Mhm.
that's what we've done in Hull. We have we have 2.5 wind turbines, and we wanted to do more, but we looked at offshore wind to see if we could do that, but it was way too expensive to bring the power back into Hull. So,
Okay,
that would be the way to go to really explore, um, more wind power, more solar power.
more wind power, more solar power, dropping the carbon footprint,
Right, right.
and hopefully that right there would slow the effects of it down. But until that point right there, rebuilding different sand dunes, and replanting the current ones that are there to protect the sands and the beachy areas. Um, that the what little bit of beach area we do have left,
Yeah.
that is that we're able to actually be on, protecting that as much as we can, and with the hopes that eventually, I believe the second alternative that you said, which is which is using the sand. Um, how would that how would that right there play if we were to use the lesser quality sand in this area right here? Would that still be an issue, or would you even consider that?
Well, I think that's the state owns that portion of the land,
Okay,
and so that would be up to the state. And I think that's a possibility. The other possibility is to place the lesser quality sand underneath and cover it with our own sand. So
see
that would
now,
be a possibility as well. Um, to look at. Um, and I know they have looked at that as a possibility, but again, the seawall is still in the wrong place.
exactly.
No matter what happens, the seawall still the sand is still going to be eroding from in front of the seawall, and and causing again more erosion, and also the
More
seawall
erosion.
to fall apart.
Yes, because as I was walking through there, the waves when they go back, only thing you hear is the clappering of rocks as the water moves and shifts the little small pebbles inside of the ocean floor. Um,
But again, the sand has dropped about 10 feet in the time that I've been here, just because of the erosion, because of where the seawall is.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This right here is going to be something that we're going to be talking about more and more. Mrs. Rhoda, I do want to thank you, and I want to let you know that even though we had a few glitches this morning,
Yeah.
we was able to get it together, and I want to thank you for bearing with me while I was trying to get this broadcast up. And I'm going to be talking to not only I'm going to be having more discussions like this with you as we move forward, especially on this station right here. Ms. Rhoda, I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for actually stepping up on the stage and giving your points of views. What will be some great closing remarks for today's broadcasting that you would like the people to know, not only in the state of Massachusetts, in the town of Hall, but around the world?
That I think it's important for everybody to do their job. Everybody to reduce their carbon footprint, because each little bit makes a difference. You think that what you do doesn't make a difference in the whole world, but it does, because everybody thinks the same thing. And if everybody does their part, then together, we can move the planet forward.
Mm-hmm.
and stop moving backward.
That is great. And I want to thank you. And I do completely 110% do agree. So I want to thank you, Mrs. Rhoda, for coming up here. This is not the first time. This is actually the beginning. Mrs. Rhoda, I do thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I will be bringing you back to the to the backstage, and to the rest of the world, around the world and beyond. I want to thank each and every last one of you guys for coming here and listening to the beginning of Earth Day TV. Right here in the town of Hall, in this great state of Massachusetts. Mrs. Rhoda, thank you so much, okay?
Thank you for
And
doing this.
no problem at all.